Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker.
Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets!
What's up, Mets fans, and happy opening day to all baseball fans across the country. Finally, baseball is back, and before the Mets get to actually play a game that was supposed to be today and should have been at least an hour and a half into, we have to wait until tomorrow as Mets fans, but we get a chance to do our season preview in the afternoon when games are about to start in about 5 minutes. And I'm here with my boy CP. CP, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. The smell of baseball's in the air. I wish we had Mets baseball today, but that's okay. It was best for the fans and everyone else to have this on the weekend, on Friday, kicking things off, maybe make things a lot easier for people wanting to go to the ballpark. Ooh, we finally are able to escape the off-season, spring training, all that good stuff. It's been a struggle this off-season to make content, but we did it. Rob, let's have a celebration. Cheers to everybody in the chat for sticking with us. It's finally time to talk about games that actually matter. It's awesome, and I appreciate you, Rob. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. It is a celebration. Opening day is always a fun time, as a kid growing up, sometimes staying home from school, as I did sometimes. But it's always a fun time, and it's interesting to see predictions that we are going to do. We're going to go through our lineup prediction for opening day. We're going to give our Mets records, and we're going to give what spot in the standings our Mets will be at the end of the year. And with that win total and where they are in the standings, are they going to be a playoff team in 2024? And of course, we'll go through MVP, Cy Young's comeback player really quickly at the end. So with that said, before we get started, there was 2 roster spots up for grabs in the bullpen. It was between Jordan Foley, Michael Talkin, and Yohan Ramirez. And a couple of hours ago, it was said that Yohan Ramirez and Michael Talkin are the last roster spots and the last 2 spots in the bullpen. Chris, what do you think about that?
I like it, man. I went on record by saying it was going to be Sean Reed-Foley and Michael Tonkin, but I caveated that, obviously saying by Sean Reed-Foley was injured, right? He had that soreness in his arm. I'm not sure where it is on his body, whether it's his biceps, his shoulder, etc. I did say that. Props to you because you hit the nail on the head picking Yohan Ramirez and Michael Tonkin. Listen, Yohan Ramirez is very impressive, like I said, coming out of nowhere from that White Sox organization. David Stearns did a great job in finding him, and Michael Tonkin as well. That heavy sweeper posted a 0.00, all zeros across the board, ERA in spring training. I like those additions. I believe Sean Reed-Foley is going to start on the IL, so no harm, no foul. He didn't have any options left to go back down to the minors, but it looks like by putting him on the IL, I know there's a lot of nitty-gritty sort of rules surrounding that. I think the Mets do bypass him hitting waivers, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, it's great time to be a Mets fan. Very excited for the bullpen. I think it's going to be a strong suit of this Mets team. And I'm excited for Yohan Ramirez and Michael Tonkin to get this opportunity, especially in the front end, because we know what we're going to get in the back end. What are we going to get from these guys in the front? That's the question. So great moves. I think the Mets played this perfectly, honestly.
Yeah, and the way David Stearns put together a bullpen with the Brewers, and they were 1-2 with the Yankees the last couple of seasons with the bullpens, or at least when Stearns was there, and it just seems like the bullpen is going to be the strength of this team. And when you have a bullpen that is a strength, you have a chance to win more ball games. It's just that simple. The Mets lost over, what was it, 28 one-run ball games last year. You cut that in half and you win half of those games. The Mets are an 86, 87 win team just by default. So, and that's because of the lack of bullpen strength they had. So Michael Tonkin and Yohan Ramirez in the bullpen now, and we're gonna get started with our opening day lineups. Again, it actually, when I was putting this together, I looked at ours and it's a little similar, but it's different. And I can probably understand why that when we spoke about roster construction. So I'm gonna give my lineup first, and then Chris you'll give yours, and then I'll ask you for your Mets record, and we'll go on from there. We'll go back and forth. So my lineup is obviously this is without JD Martinez. This is an opening day lineup for us. So mine's gonna look something like this. It's gonna show up on the left of the screen right here. So mine right here, it looks like this. Brandon Nimmo leading off, playing left field. Francisco Lindor, of course I spelled it wrong, playing shortstop. Pete Alonso playing first base, batting third. Francisco Alvarez cleaning up and catching. Jeff McNeil batting fifth, playing second base. Starlin Marte batting seventh. Batting sixth. Batting seventh. Jesus, I can't even. Sixth, playing right field. Sorry about that. Brett Beatty batting seventh, playing third. DJ Stewart DH and batting eighth, and rounding up the lineup, Harrison Bader, center field, batting ninth. The reason why I did it like this is because the year that Lindor had, once he got put in the 2-hole, I really like. And I think the Mets aren't going to play games with a guy like Lindor. And this guy was hurt last year with the bone spur and all that stuff that was going on with his elbow. And he played all those games, and he had a really outstanding season. And it just seemed like he took off once he batted second. And I find it hard to believe the Mets are going to take him out of that 2-hole, even though it's a big possibility because with analytics now, you got your best hitter, your best power hitter leading off in some aspects. If you look at the lineups around the league, there's a lot of guys that are at the top of the order that you would never think would be at the top of the order. So Francisco Alvarez, I know there's been a lot of talk about putting the pressure on this kid early on. I think he thrives on the pressure. Put him in a cleanup spot. Let's go. He's going to get a big ovation at Citi Field tomorrow. I think Alvarez is going to be the damn man and just put the pressure on him because I think he can handle it. Jeff McNeil, I was kind of going back and forth putting Marte McNeil. I put McNeil because I think we've seen that with him in a cleanup spot. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest with you. At least I hope not. I think batting fifth, I think with his bounce back year that he usually has after a bad year, putting him behind Alvarez, I think will work at least for the first 2 weeks of the season until Martinez comes up. Marte, I'm not sure, to be honest. If he's healthy,
no one's sure about Marte, Rob.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Like I was, screwing around with this lineup, and I'm like, God damn, Marte. Like I'd love to put him in the 2-hole. Like I think that's ideal for him, but you can't trust him yet. If he looks healthy and he's swinging the bat well, his bat did look slow in spring. Maybe that's because he didn't play a lot last year, and it's taken him a long time to get back into the groove of things. We'll see. Brett Beatty, he looked better the last week or two of spring. I think he's actually going to be better than I even actually thought. He might move up the ladder a little bit. He might be behind Martinez or even Alvarez at some point when Martinez comes up. So I think Beatty's going to move up the lineup a little later, probably in about 2 weeks when he's actually beating up the ball. DJ Stewart, it's kind of like the fault. I think Zach Short is a possibility tomorrow, but because with the right-hander on the mound in Peralta, I think Stewart's going to get the start. And Harrison Bader is the perfect 9-hole hitter. He's got some speed. He's a gritty hitter. He's not going to wow you, but he's going to work at bats, work counts, and then you're going to work the count going back to Brandon Nimmo, who also works the count. So that's my lineup for opening day. And Chris, we're going to go to your lineup right now, and let's take a look at yours.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of similarities here. We sort of just moved around Jeff McNeil here. Beginning of the spring training, especially when Starling Marte was coming back, we heard that smoke that he was doing a lot better in that Dominican Winter League, but we just didn't see it in spring training. And therefore, that threw me in for a loop because, like you said, Starling Marte would be my perfect two-hole hitter. He's done it before. Believe he did bulk work there at the two-hole in 2022, and I was expecting more of the same if he looked right in spring training, but he just never got to that point where I was confident in him in spring training to turn it around come opening day. So therefore, I have to slot Jeff McNeil up. Now, to caveat that, I can't just slander Starling Marte and say that Jeff McNeil looked like a shining light bulb in spring training himself, because he definitely didn't. But I think that you have to work around the bottom of this lineup and kind of playing around with it a little bit. And I did move Brett Beatty up one spot compared to your lineup because Brett Beatty did wow me toward the tail end of spring training. I believe like the last 2 to 3 weeks, he really was shining bright. Like his bat and just the overall confidence of his at bats, regardless of what the result was, just looked like he was a lot more comfortable in seeing the ball better. I agree with you. Last season, when I saw Francisco Lindor hit in that 2 spot, I was like, okay, this is great. We should have Lindor in the 2 spot all the time. But I think that this lineup does take a little bit of a hit in terms of flexibility until JD Martinez is able to come up whenever he's able to come up. We don't know if it's going to be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or what have you. I do think that Lindor is going to be back in the classic 3 spot and Pete Alonso in the 4 spot. Now, once JD Martinez comes back, I think everybody moves up one and you keep Francisco Alvarez there in the 5 spot, like Sanders was saying there in the chat. But I do think for right now, in terms of just the flexibility and the personnel that the Mets have available, you have to do Nimmo, McNeil, Lindor, Alonso, Alvarez as your top 5. Hopefully, Brett Beatty continues to streak as your 6 hitter. And then really after that, Marte, Stewart, Bader, whatever you get on top with those 3 guys is just basically a cherry on top. I'm not expecting big things from DJ Stewart. We'll see if he's able to catch any sort of spark like he was in the tail end of last season. Starling Marte, I just told you, he looks lost. But what can you do? He has to bat 7th, right? So I'm really curious what we're going to see out of Starling Marte. And then, like you said, Harrison Bader really is that prototypical 9 hitter. Not expecting big things to the bat from Harrison Bader at all if history repeats itself. But if he's able to outperform his previous season's metrics, which is not hard by any stretch of the imagination, and he's able to stay healthy on that 1 year, $10 million deal, I really do think he's the perfect guy to flip the lineup over to Brandon Nimmo and give opposing pitchers nightmares, right? Both at the bottom and the top of the lineup when you bat Harrison Bader and Brandon Nimmo back to back. Now, when prospects come up, if and when Luis Angel Acuna comes up, I think that he'd also be the perfect 9-hole hitter to flip the lineup for Brandon Nimmo, but that is a future worry for us. I think come opening day, this will be the Mets lineup. I could be wrong. Like I said, your track history with these projections is a little bit better than mine here in the early goings of the spring training and the opening season as we approach opening day tomorrow. But did you see that leak that happened on Twitter, potentially with the graphics guys at Citi Field and the little TV that was over there? I'm not sure what happened. I know that was mimicking one of those spring training lineups. I saw Tyrone Taylor in the outfield and batting last. I don't know. Maybe maybe the Mets throw a whole wrench in things and they go complete 180 on us. Who knows?
So I was coming home from work and I was passing by Citi Field. They were messing with the lights. They were flickering the lights at Citi Field, the new LED lights they got. I couldn't read it because it's on a weird angle when I'm on the Van Wyck going home. They had a lineup up there because they were announcing the players, like checking the microphone, the sound, and all that. Right, and you could see they have the lineup. And I swore I saw the Tyrone Taylor across the screen when they were announcing his name. I don't know if that was just during like the opening ceremonies type of practicing that they were doing, but yeah. Yep. I would not be shocked. Tyrone Taylor had a really good spring, and I think he's a better offensive player than Harrison Bader, even when Bader's healthy, and he's just as good defensively as Bader. So I wouldn't be shocked by that, honestly. Is it possible that Marte doesn't start off in the lineup on opening day, and we're both wrong on that, and Harrison Bader is maybe playing right field, or Tyrone Taylor playing right field? Or one of them playing center field, and Marte's on the bench because of his really, really poor performance in spring training? What do you think about that?
I think it's plausible. I just don't know if I would say if I'm confident enough to say that Starling Marte is not going to be the opening day right fielder. Like I would understand the thought process behind it, but I really don't know if I'm confident just to say like that Marte is not going to be in the lineup. Like Saint is saying here in the chat, like Marte can be your DH. I don't know if I'm like, listen, all off season, I was very adamant. I don't want Starling Marte at DH. I don't want Starling Marte at DH. I don't know who we're going to have at DH, but it better not be Starling Marte. I really do think that he's going to be the right fielder, but he needs to prove in the early goings of this season that he is that guy to be out there every single day, coming off those injuries and getting that double groin surgery. If he's not, you can bet your bottom dollar. If it's not opening day, then definitely early on the season, Tyrone Taylor is going to get mass reps at that position. And then whatever happens, whether it's injury wise or performance wise with Harrison Bader, then you'll see the prospects start to come up after that sort of period of the service time manipulation. But listen, I don't know what's going to happen. The righty's on the mound, so that's why I think I agree with you. DJ Stewart is going to be that lefty DH option, especially with Mark Vientos not even making the team. There really is no other viable DH candidate in my eyes, right? With everybody playing their regular positions than DJ Stewart, especially with the righty on the mound. So I think that honestly, what we have here with the combination of the outfield, especially Nemo, Bader, and Marte is going to hold true. But seeing that Tyrone Taylor little leak out there, I'm not going to call it a leak because, like I said, that was mimicking very closely to what the Mets had out there in their last spring training game. But it makes you wonder sometimes. It really does make you wonder.
It really does. But I wouldn't be, I think they would give Marte a shot at least the first two series of the year, because he was so much of a catalyst 2 years ago. What he can do dynamically in this line, because if Marte is Marte, at least close to 2022, even without Martinez, this lineup is so much better. But even with Martinez, with Marte being at least 70% of what he was in 2022, this lineup is absolutely lethal. And they're just gonna, pepper the ball all over the place. And you got a lot of guys that can put the bat on the ball. And I think that's important for a lineup like this when you get run producers like Lindor and Alonso, and even possibly Alvarez as the next run producer. And we know what Martinez can do as well. All right, Chris. So you're up. Mets win total for the 2024 season. It's going to depend a lot. Now, I know this changed because I know we were in the low 80s before the Martinez signing. So let's look at your win total for the 2024 season for the Mets.
85 wins for the New York Mets. I think they have 85 wins. They go 85 and 77. Like I said, I was at 82 to 83 wins before the JD Martinez signing. I do think the lineup gets exponentially better with JD Martinez than it would be or would have been without him. I still am not confident that they're a high 80s team and a high 80s win team. I think that multiple different factors, the bottom of the lineup, how are they going to do? And how is the starting rotation going to do over the course of 162? Are there going to be injuries to guys like Severino or Manaya? Can Jose Quintana and an Adrian Hauser carry the workload over the course of 162? All of these question marks there. Like, this team is infinitely better than what they were when Mets fans were panicking. Oh, we're only signing the bottom of the barrel type guys in the offseason. This team is infinitely better than what a lot of people gave him credit for early on to this offseason. But how much better are they going to be? I have them at mid 80s win total. We'll get into our playoff sort of outlook predictions here, the NLE standings predictions as well. And you'll see exactly where the Mets fall in terms of my eyes. But yeah, like I said, I think JD Martinez will inevitably, maybe not even just himself, add on a couple additional wins. That's what really influenced me to go from 82, 83 to maybe like an 85. But like I said, I still have to give, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, I still have to give the objective credit to teams like the Braves and the Phillies and what they've accomplished last season and their off seasons that they had compared to what the Mets have done. I think 85 wins is in the realm, but there's a silver lining here. When we get into the playoff outlook, you'll be quite surprised. I do think that this gives the New York Mets an opportunity to make one of the wild card spots. Which one is it? I don't know. Give me 85 and 77. I think that's a huge win, especially when everyone was thinking about this bridge type year, etc. 85 wins in a bridge year would be absolutely awesome. Sign me up for it. And I know, Rob, you're a little bit more ambitious than I am, and I like that. So let me hear what you got to say.
Yeah, and the bridge year went out the window that people talked about because of small market concerns once they signed JD Martinez. Their plan that they told us kind of went out the window, at least enough where they're not bridging this year for 2025. They're just not doing that because they didn't have to sign JD Martinez. They told you the whole time they weren't, and then they did for whatever reason. We can speculate what the reason is, but I'm definitely more ambitious. And the reason why, because I was a lot higher on this team prior to the Martinez sign-in because of the fact I think guys in the rotation are going to be solid, not great, but solid. Solid rotations get you through a season. A healthy, or at least I would say about an 80% healthy rotation gets you through a season. And with a bullpen that I think most of us believe is going to be a hell of a lot better than it was last year and probably can be as good or better than 2022's bullpen, I think the lineup, you had a lot of guys that have to bounce back after last year, and I think they will. So I was going around 83, 84 wins just before the Martinez signing. But you know what? I'm going to go with 87 wins. And I know that's a little bit crazy for some people to believe that. But the reason why I say that is that, yeah, listen, JD Martinez brings a new dynamic to this lineup this team didn't even have in 2022 when this basically a very similar lineup was outperforming and outscoring the majority of the league. They were a pest. They were just killing teams offensively. They were just, hitting base hits, hitting doubles, not hitting a lot of home runs because they were in the middle of the pack in home runs in 2022. They were scoring runs. They killed you with runners in scoring position. And Martinez is one of those run producers. You add him to Lindor, Alonso, and even Alvarez, who I think is going to be a very clutch performer for this team. I'm only adding 3 or 4 wins to my overall total prior to the Martinez sign-in. And I think that's a big deal because I think Martinez can add 5 to 7 games more in total of wins than when I'm going on the lower side of 3 or 4 because I'm being a little bit calm because I know I'll get killed once this video is over, especially from Braves and Philly fans who are already killing me all over the place. I think this team is a lot better than people are giving credit for. I think you agree, Chris, as well, and why our mid-80s win total is more realistic than a 70-win team. Because last year, everything went wrong, and they still won 75 games. With losing 28 one-run games last year, you would think you're going to win a little bit more one-run games just based on your bullpen alone. But you're going to score more runs with a Martinez addition, along with bounce back years from Jeff McNeil. And you would think Alvarez, it becomes a better hitter. And all you need right now is either Beatty, Marte, or Bader to perform decent with the additions that you add in Martinez. And you're talking about a team that, if things go right, obviously you want help to be the main concern. Because if this team is healthy, there's no doubt that this team's I would say most likely a playoff team. Now, where is that 87? I think 87 wins can definitely be a number 2 wild card. But again, we don't know. You can't really, predict that because, the Mets were a 101 win team and they were the number 1 wild card when last year it was a 91 win team and 89 win team. So, and then the 84th win team was the 3rd wild card. So, if we're going to go on that metric, both of our records are going to make the playoffs. Just a matter of what position of a wild card, because nobody is delusional enough to say the Mets are going to win the division unless drastic injuries happen to the Braves. But then you still give a little bit more to the Phillies. But once you look at my NL East, I'm not going to give the Phillies a lot of credit at all because I think they're taking a step down year by year. World Series, NLCS, and they didn't really do much at all this offseason except retain their biggest acquisition, which was basically Nola, who they retained. So 87 wins, and that's only because the addition of JD Martinez where I was around the 83, 84 win mark, and I'm going on the lower side of a grand total of 87 with your 85 predictions for the Mets win total for 2024. So NL East. I think our number one choice for the NL East is probably the Nationals, as we all predicted. But Chris, let's get your prediction for the NL East, and we'll look at it right now, and then discuss why you believe it's going to be this way.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go with the Braves at the top. They're undisputed NL East champions. Their team is just absolutely on paper. It's just awesome. I hate to give them credit. I really do, because when you ask me about the biggest Mets rival, or personally, and I know hate's a strong word, but my most hated, despised, whatever, just sort of characteristic you want to say, it is the Atlanta Braves. I despise them. I can't stand them. And I really do I'm always praying for their downfall. But nonetheless, you have to give them the NL East crown. And I do think that they're going to be in the high 90s win total, and they're going to take and run away with the NL East. So this is where I got really, I guess, it got really challenging for me, right? The Phillies and the Mets. The Mets always play the Phillies very tough, and I understand that. I do think on paper, it's not far off in terms of the talent level that both teams possess. Like, you can say the Mets might have as equally good of a lineup. Maybe. I mean, I don't know if it's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but maybe you can say so. The bullpen, I think, is night and days different. I think the Mets have that in the bag. And the rotation, depending on how the Mets do, can definitely out sort of pitch the Phillies. But nonetheless, the Phillies just have that scrappy sort of aura to them that I just don't know how they've got it done in seasons prior, especially in that World Series or NL pennant winning year. I gave the edge to the Phillies. I really did. And that's my objective side thinking. That's my objective brain thinking. And if that flip-flops, obviously I'm rooting for the Mets to finish above the Phillies. We all are, right? Because I think that long-standing rivalry is just another team that we can't stand in this division. But really, at the end of the day, I had to be a little bit objective and a little bit more realistic. And that's why I think the Mets do win the 85 game mark, and they hit the 85 game mark. And I do have the Phillies winning around 87 to 88 games, somewhere in that ballpark. And these are going to be the second and third wild card teams. We'll see it here in just a second. I know I'm giving spoilers on my side, but that's how it's going to shake out. And I think a lot of people are underestimating the Nationals. I've seen this club play. They've played the New York Mets tough last season. I do think they have some up and coming talent, especially post Juan Soto trade. They got CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, and they got a whole bunch of guys in there that are just hungry. So I don't have high expectations for the Marlins. I know that might be an unpopular opinion. They won 84 games last year, but I think they had a very weird offseason, and I just don't think that they had a great offseason at all in terms of how they're looking going into this season. So I don't have high expectations for the Marlins at all. Am I going to be surprised if the Marlins give the Mets fits when it comes to the regular season? No, because they somehow always do. Although in most recent news, it helps that Mets killer, well-known Mets killer John Birdie is getting out of the division and going to the Yankees. Nonetheless, this is how the NL East rounds out for me. I do think the Mets finish in third place in the NL East. Like I said, I really, like, my heart was saying put the Mets in second, but my brain was saying you have to realize and look at the trends, and you have to put the Mets in third. But I do think that 3 NL East teams are going to make the playoffs this season. And I do think the Mets will be one of those teams. And we'll see it, I believe, in the next graphic, if that's what we have up next. But that's my NL East right there. You can obviously flip-flop the Nationals and Marlins. Who really cares? But I think that Braves, Phillies, Mets is a little bit undisputable as we go into opening day. So that's what I got.
Yeah, and I could see the pendulum swinging as well. With the Phillies and the Mets. If you go back last year, and when the Mets kind of went on their spiral in June, guess who they faced in the beginning of June? It was the Phillies, and they played a lot of games against the Phillies. June, July, August, September. They played the majority of their games against each other when the Mets were basically, an embarrassment. So I don't give a lot of credit to the Phillies for being up a team that was basically down in the dumps. And, the Phillies who were actually became a World Series team in 2022, the Mets dominated them. And the Phillies had a hard time beating the Mets last year, even with the embarrassment that the Mets were last year with all the injuries and just the underperformances and everything like that. So I'm going a little different. You know what? Fuck Philly. Fuck Philly. Fuck Philly. All right. I'm putting Philly in the third spot. I'm giving the Mets the number 2 spot because of the fact that the Phillies shown that they're vulnerable in the playoffs last year against the Diamondbacks, game 6 and game 7, where you only had to win one game to advance to the World Series for the second straight year. You lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and everybody can talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks all they want. They got hot at the right time, just like the Phillies did in 2022. They got hot at the right time. The Phillies choked last year in the perfect spot. All you heard during the playoffs was how great the Philly fans were, how loud they were. They were singing, a walk-up song and all that stuff, and loud. They were great. They were great. As a Met fan, I love that type of stuff. They were loud. They were enthusiastic. They were just insane. They were the best fans in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, in particular last year. And that couldn't get the Phillies over the hump against the Diamondbacks. Now, let's be honest, the Phillies were a better team on paper than the Diamondbacks, but we all know in the playoffs, on paper means absolutely nothing. And I think you're seeing it slowly. The Phillies kind of walk their way back to the pack a little bit more, and that's where the Mets come in, and why I think the Mets are going to be better. They lost 7 one-run games against the Phillies last year, and they played a lot of them after June when the Mets were basically done and out of the playoff picture. That's going to be different. And even if the Mets win 4 out of those 7 or 3 out of the 7, that's a couple of games swing where I think the Mets are and the Phillies are in that mid-80 range total, where I think the Mets are just going to go above the Phillies. I'm not saying 3 or 4 or 5 games. No, it's going to be 1 or 2. I think they're going to battle it out for the second spot. And I agree with you, Chris. I think 3 teams in the NL East are going to make the playoffs. I don't think anybody, except for the division winner, obviously for the Central, is going to make the playoffs. I don't think any of the Central teams are very good. I think they're in the middle of the pack, where like the low 80s are, a couple of those teams, but they're going to beat up on each other, which is going to affect them in the wild card. And I don't trust the Padres that much, even though I think the Padres might be a little bit better. I think the way the vibes were in that clubhouse, including Soto, I didn't think it worked. So I think they'll be a little bit better, but I think the Giants are sneaky good. And I think they're going to be the last wildcard team as well. So the Mets in second place with 87 wins. I think the Phillies are just going to fall a little bit short in that second place hole and be a third place team. So as you can see, guys, we have different lineups. We have different win totals. We have different slots in the NL East as our predictions. But there's one thing that we all think is true going into the season, as opening day is tomorrow, is that a lot of Met fans think they're going to be better than what the national audience is giving them credit for. I think their over-under is like 80.5. I think they're going to blow past that easily, at least without predictions. Obviously, health is a factor, right? Nobody goes into the season giving a win total prediction and saying, oh, that's even if everybody gets injured. No, right? We base our prediction on a healthy roster. That's what everybody does. The win totals, the over-unders with the sports books, they go based on healthy rosters and probably last year's stats for the most part. They don't really, because you can see, I don't think it changed after the Martinez signing, the over-unders. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the books lately.
I didn't look at the books either, yeah.
When it was 80.5, when it first came out, I put $100 down on the Mets to be over because I think that's an easy win total. And now with Martinez, I think it's even easier. Again, it can be a disaster based on, injuries. But again, I don't know if the way you predict, Chris, what place they'll be in, record. Do you do it based on a healthy roster, or do you do if there is some injuries, do you do it a different way?
No, I definitely do it based off a healthy roster. I think it's very just tough and downright honestly just saddening to sort of just like project win totals based off of injuries. Like, what is the metric that you can place on Harrison Bader potentially suffering an injury? There is none. Like, that is just something you can't predict in sports, and that's something you shouldn't predict when you come up with these projections. So for me, 85 wins is a healthy Mets roster, and that's the perfect storm of combinations, even weaknesses that I think that this team possesses still. I think that all things considered, that is how I take into account. No injuries, absolutely not. 85 wins with a healthy roster is what I think the Mets are going to top out at. If they beat it, I love it. I'm all for it. But this is the sweet spot that I'm comfortable in terms of going here right before day one. So yeah, no injuries in my projections. None.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you're gonna predict injuries, like I think you're just looking for. I think you're just starting the year and starting the way you think about the process of the year negatively. And I'm not saying you can't be negative because you can always look at negatives when you break down a roster. Like the rotation is probably the weakest. I think most people can agree. Then the lineup, then the bullpen. You can rank it however you want, but I think the last say 1, 2, and 3, the rotation is probably third, but it can be number one based on the talent that's in this rotation. If they get to that level, if Severino looks like an ace, well, now the rotation looks a hell of a lot better. If Sean Manaea looks like a number 2, now we're really talking here, and that's with Kodai Senga not even in the rotation yet. So a lot of things can happen, but let's get with the awards, the comeback player. I wrote down what I have. I did it in one of my videos. But Chris, let's start with. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are we going into our wild card teams at all?
You want to do that? Yeah, we can definitely do that. Absolutely.
I'm just going to name my wild card teams off the bat because I took a look at your video, your season preview video, and I think that you were putting some mad disrespect down on the Arizona Diamondbacks names, Rob. I like the Diamondbacks. I like everything that they did. I think they're going to take the first wild card spot, and I know that you have them a little bit more even keel than that. That's where I wanted to bring this conversation up, especially for the viewers. I have the Arizona Diamondbacks winning 90 games, going 90-72, getting that second place in the NL West and getting the first wild card spot. With the additions of Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez in their rotation, as well as adding bats like Jock Peterson and Eugenio Suarez, I think that they had a perfect offseason to build off of the youthful roster that took them to the World Series as it was back in 2023. I really do have them as my first wildcard team. Then I have those 2 NL East teams, like I said here in your graphic, the Phillies at 88 wins. And this is where we're sort of in the similar line of thinking, right? Those close 1-run ball games against the Phillies last year. And what seems like it's always a close matchup between the Mets and the Phillies. Like, those 3 or 4 games that can swing to the opposite side of the Mets' favor maybe this year might influence that. And that's where I think that the Mets are going to be right there for the taking in that second wildcard spot if everything goes great and they're more in line with your win total. But even if it doesn't, let's say all things remain consistent from last season, I think 85 wins still sneaks them at the third spot. So I think it's Arizona at 90-72. I think it's Philly in that second wild card spot at 88 wins. And I think it's the Mets at 85 wins to just barely get that third wild card spot. I wanted to bring that up specifically before we get into the awards because I saw a 500 record for the Arizona Diamondbacks for this upcoming season in your preview, and I had to tell you, Rob, I strongly disagree with that.
I respect it, but here's the problem that I have. I think the Giants are better. Obviously, the Dodgers are better, and I think the Padres, I don't think they're much better than the Diamondbacks, but the problem is with the NL West is that they're going to beat up on each other a lot. There's going to be 2 teams that are going to beat up on another couple of teams. Everybody's going to beat up on the Rockies. We know that. But I think the Padres and the Diamondbacks are going to get beat around during the season with the Dodgers and the Giants. And nobody's really talking about the Giants. Like they didn't do a lot of stuff. They did it very, I would say, oddly. How it worked out with Soler and getting Snell late. I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for. They have a hell of a rotation. If you look at their rotation, they got a really damn good rotation. I think they got the best rotation in the NL West. Because I know the Dodgers are going to be, a high 90 win team. I think they're going to win the division easily, even with all the problems they're having. I think they're going to beat. I think the problem is the Diamondbacks have 3 teams in front of them that on paper look better than them, and I just feel like there's a target on their back now. People know who they are. They surprised a lot of people last year. Nobody was looking at them. I think they snuck around, similar to what the Mets did in 2022, where nobody really took them seriously until late in the year, and that's when the Mets had a punch back. Now the Diamondbacks did punch back. They got to the World Series, but you saw what happened when they faced a team that wasn't flawed. If you look at who they played, besides the Dodgers, everybody in the playoffs that they played was flawed, right? So they were hot at the right time, and I think it just benefited them. Like, there was no way anybody bet the Diamondbacks to win Game 6 and 7 in Philadelphia,
Oh,
but they
absolutely
did.
not.
And maybe that's the mental toughness that a lot of people are talking about, and they did make a lot of good moves. And even with the Jordan Montgomery signing, it's going to be good for them. I just think that the NL West, I think, is tough, and
It's a stacked division.
to
Absolutely.
get to that many wins and to give Arizona that much credit, I want to, because I can care less about
Sure.
the Dodgers. I can care less about the Giants, and I damn sure can't stand the Padres.
Yep.
I would love to give a lot more credit and a lot more emphasis on the Diamondbacks. I just can't because of the division. So where I'm going with the wild card, I'm giving the Giants the number 1 wild card spot at 91 wins. I think they're a team that is going to surprise a lot of people, which they shouldn't, because if you look at the roster, they're probably number 2 in the NL West, and they're one of the better teams. I think they're probably top 5 in baseball, and so in the National League, record-wise. And just looking at their overall lineup and rotation and their bullpen, they're a solid team, and not enough credit's going to give to them because, it was the whole Arson Judge and Otani. They couldn't get any big free agents, even though they were throwing money bags at players. Nobody wanted to go to San Francisco. They're going to win 91 games, and I think they're going to be number 1 wild card, where
They
the
got
Mets
young
are going to come
Huli.
in. Yeah, absolutely. The Mets in the number 2 spot at 87 wins, and the Phillies at 86. Yes, Philly fans, I know you're going to kill me during this video, but you will make the playoffs. And listen, as a wild card team, anything can happen. We all know that, right? I mean, look at the last 2 seasons. Wild card teams made the World Series. The Philly fans know this, right? The Philly fans weren't great all season. They had one good month at the end of the year, and they took it to the World Series, just like the Arizona Diamondbacks. They had a good April, and they had a good September and took it into the playoffs. And I do think the Mets are going to surprise people, just like the Giants, that are not getting enough credit for what they did. All the talk was about the damn Dodgers. And even though the Dodgers are really damn good, the Giants are going to sneak up on a lot of people this year. So Giants, number 1 wild card, Mets, number 2, and Phillies, number 3. So that's where I'm going to go.
That's actually a great point too. Like, I wanted to give the Giants a lot of credit, and MEZ saying it too, like 2 names that I could just completely forgot about. Like, I know the Blake Snell and the young Hulis, but I was like, they got Matt Chapman and Jorge Soler, so that lineup's gonna be pretty solidified as well. I don't know, man. Like, that NL West, like you just said, is just gonna be a complete crapshoot. I do think the Dodgers. I know you said they're going to be a high 90s win team. I have them as the only only NL team to eclipse 100 wins. I think they can go as high as 103 wins, but nonetheless, that is going to be a bloodbath out there in the NL West, and I'm very curious to see who ends up in that second spot. I think that we can all agree whoever ends up in that second spot is probably going to get that first wild card seed, right? Because we both have NL West teams in that first wild card. I have Arizona and you have San Francisco. So that's what it's going to come down to, because obviously our division winner for the NL West is the Dodgers. You'd be kind of hard pressed to find anybody that's not picking the Dodgers. So it's going to be very interesting. I think that's one division that I'm definitely, just like outside of the NL East, very curious and intrigued to see how it's going to play out. As always, like the AL East is going to be the talk of town, but the NL West is definitely to keep your eye out for, because like, I think that is like 1 through 4 right there. Arizona, Obviously, everyone outside the Rockies in that division is solid, like very solid. So it's gonna be an interesting time out there in the West. So I feel for all those fans. It should be a great ride for all those fans because whoever
Yeah.
comes out in those top two are definitely making the playoffs. And then I think that whoever's in that third spot in the NL West is going to be just behind the Mets here, just barely missing out in the playoffs.
Yeah, so I think where we're looking at here is that probably the last wild card team is going to be between what 85 wins or so, 84, 85 wins is where I think it's going to
Somewhere
be.
around
Again,
there.
that
Yeah.
can change quickly because again, we talked about the NL West, right? There's the only team that is probably not going to make any noise is the Rockies, so everybody's going to beat up on them. So you got four other teams to worry about and beat up on each other. The Central, I think everybody's going to beat up on each other. I chose the Cubs as the division winner, but that's a default because I think they did a good job during the offseason. But the Central can go anywhere. The Brewers traded pitchers. Brewers aren't as good. I see the Reds as a team that can be sneaky good. But again, can they be, they're not a surprise anymore. People are going to be looking for them. So it's going to be very interesting. Where I think the mid to middle of the 80 win total is going to get you in the playoffs. It's just that somebody's going to get stuck in that 83 to 84 win total, which could be the Mets. That might be looking, outside the playoff wild card spots just because of a few wins. That's why outside of division games against the NL West and the NL Central, specifically the NL West, are going to be crucial because you might have similar win totals where head-to-head matchup might be a tiebreaker. So it's going to be very interesting when the Mets face the Giants early on the West Coast in April. Those games are going to matter because if you're predicting around similar win totals, if you think the Giants going to be close to the Mets or in that around that range, if they're anywhere near each other, similar win totals, tiebreakers are going to matter, including the Diamondbacks, the Padres. When you face those teams, you got to win the head-to-head battles because the last thing you want to have is similar records and lose on we played 7 games and we lost 4 games to 3 in a head-to-head matchup and you don't make the playoffs. That would suck. There's no tiebreaker game. So that's the unfortunate part, Chris. So MVP, ALNL. If you want to do ALNL or you just want to do National League, it's up to you. Do you want to do all of them?
I didn't get a chance to think about my MVP, so you go first for the league, and then I'll go second.
Okay, so for the NL, I got Mookie Betts. I had a couple of other guys that I was thinking about, but I'm gonna go the easy route and just go Mookie Betts because I didn't like anybody else that I think can perform better. And if the lineup is what I think it could be for the Dodgers, I think Mookie Betts is going to shine for the National League. What do you got, Chris? If you have a quick thought on that.
NL MVP, I'm going to go Mookie Betts' teammate, which is kind of crazy. I'm going to go Freddie Freeman. I like Freddie Freeman's
Nice.
game, and I think that he just impacts the game every which way. I think that he's going to have another MVP type season, and quite frankly, he probably is my most feared hitter as a fan of the Mets. When the Mets are playing whoever Freddie Freeman, whatever team Freddie Freeman's on, I think that highly of him. Even though he's getting up there in age, I understand that. I think that he's always going to be dangerous to bat, and he plays a very above average first base. We all know that. So give me Freddie Freeman as my NL MVP. Crazy to sit here and just talk about 2 Dodgers players, along with not even mention Shohei Ohtani, talking about the MVP sort of race. Give me Freddie Freeman, though. I got to do it.
Yeah, so we're sticking with the Dodgers on the Dodger players for the MVP for the NL. We'll leave the American League alone. National League Cy Young. I don't know if you have a thought on that, but I'm going with Zach Wheeler. I think Zach Wheeler is going to have an outstanding season. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. He struggled last year a little bit, even though he picked it up later in the year. With his around 3.5 ERA. I think he's going to have an outstanding season. I don't think the rotation for the Phillies is any good. I think they're going to struggle. But I think Zach Wheeler is going to be a dominant. I think it's going to be a Yankee situation with Garrett Cole. Going to be outstanding, but the team's not going to be as good. So Zach Wheeler and El Cy Young. So what do you think about that?
Would it be crazy for me to say Blake Snell? Would it be
Wouldn't that
crazy
be,
for me to
wouldn't that
say
be something? Good for
Would it be
him.
crazy? Because I mean, at the end of the day, he's on a 1-year deal, man. He's on an opt-out after 1-year deal. I believe it's what it was. He signed for 2 years, $63 million, something like that. And I believe after the first year, it's an opt-out. If I am wrong on that, please correct me. But I do think he has the ability to opt out of that deal after 1 year to get a longer-term deal.
Yeah,
So
he
I
does.
will say, with that chip on his shoulder again, he knows what the business is. I'm going back-to-back Cy Young awards for Blake Snell. That is my very sort of out there sort of prediction. And I think that he does get that. And that'd be his third Cy Young, one in the AL, one in the NL. And I think he goes back to back. Honestly, I think that him taking a big risk on himself, like, I'm not sure if it was ever reported and ever official that the Mets or the Yankees offered a long-term deal for Blake Snell. I know it wasn't the AAV that he wanted or the total $1 million that he wanted. I get it. He bet on himself, right? Whether that was his own doing or Scott Boras's doing, who knows? He took the 1-year deal essentially. Well, it was a 2-year deal worth $30+ million in each year. But if he realizes that he can get a long-term bag, right, after the season,
Mhm.
is it really hard to say that he's going to go back to back? So yeah, Patty, I'm going large with this prediction. Give me Blake Snell as my back-to-back Cy Young Award winner for the NL.
And Sanders just said Max Fried, and you know what? I was gonna choose Max Fried, Sanders, to be honest with you, but I changed while I was doing my video, only because Max Fried's injuries scare me. I know he's on a contract, going into a contract year, and there's a lot of talk about the Mets might going after him in the offseason. I worry about his injuries, and he's not been a good postseason pitcher, which is that doesn't even mean anything with the Cy Young because it's a season award. But Max Fried is going to be very interesting though. But a lot, and somebody brought up, I think it was Easy brought up Sale. Sale's going to have, I think he's going to be outstanding. The problem is that I don't think he's going to be available enough. When he pitches, he's really good. That's what we talk about when it comes to Severino, right? When he's healthy, he's got ace type stuff, and he pitches like ace type stuff when healthy. I think the same with Chris Sale. If Sale is healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. It's just he doesn't pitch enough to warrant that. Like, I think he pitched a little over 20 games last year. I think that's the same thing he's going to pitch, which isn't going to be worthy enough of a Cy Young, regardless of his numbers. So Max Fried is a very interesting call, Sanders. But that's a good point by you, because I was thinking about Max Fried. And Spencer Strider, I'm not taking him at all, because I think he's the biggest. I think he's the biggest hyped pitcher nationally, and he shouldn't be, because in the biggest games for the Braves, even during the season when games matter for the best record, he did not perform well, and he sucks in the playoffs. Big games, he's nowhere to be found. And the Mets, when they're not beating themselves, they have Strider's number. So
yeah, I don't even want to mention Strider and Cy Young in the same sentence. You know who I think could be a dark horse, though, for the NL Cy Young? He actually just got there. He just got to the NL. I think that a rebound-type season in a new environment on the West Coast for Dylan Cease could make him be in the running. Nice. The Padres would have back-to-back Cy Young Award winners, and obviously Dylan Cease is going to be a major component of that team in that rotation. I do expect a bounce-back season. Is it going to be big enough to be a Cy Young? In 2022, he was electric. I would just keep Dylan Cease's name on the radar, at least in that conversation.
That's a great name, actually. And in that ballpark, it's a pitcher's ballpark. That's going to help him a lot more. That's a good call, Chris. I didn't even think of Dylan Cease. So that kind of makes me feel bad now that I wanted to change my Cy Young. Yeah, that's a good point. So two more things: National League Rookie of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year for the National League. So my NL Rookie of the Year I think it's gonna be Jackson Merrill. I think he's gonna just be insane. I think I'm gonna go with him, with Jackson Merrill. So I just think I actually watched him a lot in the minors for whatever reason. I just seen a lot of highlights of him, and I think he's gonna be really good. So who you got for your National League Rookie of the Year?
I didn't think about this one at all, honestly. That's kind of disappointing to me that I didn't think about this one. Is the dude for the Pirates going to be pitching at all this year? Skeens? Is he going to be in the?
I don't know if he made the opening day roster, but I think he's going to come up like after that threshold in the middle of April. So I guess you can. Yeah, scheme.
I guess I'll say him, but this wasn't a pick that I give too much thought to. I like the Merrill pick a lot. If I had to mimic that, I would. But just to give some like differing perspectives here, Sanders, I like that. Drew Gilbert, okay. I mean,
Right.
I'm part of the Drew Gilbert hive. I can get with that. We'll toss it up for Drew Gilbert. Drew Gilbert's my pick, but I will say, aside from Jackson Merrill, definitely watch out for Paul Skeens. Obviously, was a top pick in the draft not too long ago, and he throws gas. So watch out
Yeah.
for his name.
Yeah, Drew Gilbert would be interesting, but if Drew Gilbert is a part of this team and has a chance, plays enough games to win Rookie of the Year, that means the Mets are probably having a bad season, to be honest with you, or there's a bad injury that might hurt.
Fair
So
too. That's a
that's a good thing that he can possibly win the Rookie of the Year, but it means that the Mets are having a bad season, most likely, because if Marte's playing bad, you might see Drew Gilbert up here anyway. But easy comeback player of the year. That's
You know my
interesting.
answer. I know
Okay,
my answer.
what do you got?
Luis Severino. Easy. Easy, easy, easy. Luis Severino is my pick, hands down. Go watch my video that I dropped earlier today. I talked about Luis Severino. He is hands down, the player on this team that is going to win comeback player of the year for the New York Mets, right? Coming off of a terrible season last year at the Yankees. Obviously, I know he wasn't a Met last season, but nonetheless, we talk about your Lindoras, your Alonsos, your Sengas, your Martinez's, like the team award for MVP. It doesn't usually go to a pitcher, but I think Luis Severino could definitely change that this season for the New York Mets. And I do think that he's going to turn it around in a huge, huge way. He's my comeback player of the year. Luis Severino, that Arsenal's filthy. He's still in the prime of his career. And 3, he's operating on a 1-year deal, which has an immense chip on his shoulder. That's 3 aspects right there that are working in his favor to have a resurgent type season. I'm excited.
So I wrote this down. I either had Severino or Starlin Marte. I think it's going to be a Met as well. I'm going to go with Starlin Marte. I think a lot of people are worried about Starlin Marte's spring. I don't. I think Starlin Marte is a veteran. Just like you see, Lindor not have a good spring. Alonso didn't have a good spring. Alonso didn't show a lot of power. Lindor's average was down. Marte average was way down. I think he's a veteran guy that's just looking to get his timing right, working on things, and he feels healthy. He looks healthy. I know his bat's been a little slow, but I just think that, I look back at his spring when he first became a Met Marte, and it wasn't good either. And he had an outstanding season. So I think Marte, I'm going to choose Marte as my comeback player, even though Severino was my other choice. Marte, I think the comeback player of the year. I think the Mets have a few of those guys, unfortunately, because they got a lot of guys who are injury prone, who had terrible seasons last year. So if a Met has a comeback player of the year, the Mets are probably going to be in good shape because it's going to help them overall.
Have we thought about, and I hate just getting away from this Luis Severino hype sort of aspect of this. I'm just thinking back on Rookie of the Year for the NL, and I don't know how we didn't mention his name, probably because we saw him get shellacked in his first outing. But Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I mean, are we really not going to mention him as a potential for the award? I know that he got lit up in his first outing. Are we confident that he's not going to win Rookie of the Year for the NL?
Yeah, I'm confident. I don't think he's going to be very good. I think the whole nonsense with Ohtani, his buddy, his friend, going through that nonsense, and now Otani's got to be protecting himself and can't be like that security blanket for Yamamoto. I don't think I think he's going to be okay, but not to give him the Rookie of the Year or the Cy Young or whatever you might want to pick to choose. I just don't think. I think he's going to be fine later, maybe next year when he's a little more comfortable. But this year, I don't think he's going to have a season worth the $320 million that he got from the Dodgers, because he is their ace. Like, let's be honest. I know Tyler Glasnow was their opening day starter in Seoul, but I think Yamamoto is probably projected to be their number one. And really, I just don't trust him yet. I think there was a lot less pressure on Kodai Senga, even in New York, because he wasn't a top pitcher in Japan. Even though he was very good, he had concerns, but there wasn't the amount of pressure that Yamamoto is. Yamamoto, we talked about this during, Mets hot stoves during the offseason. He was projected to get what, 180 to $200 million, and it ended up being well over 300. Like, that's a ton of pressure
Crazy.
for a guy that's
Crazy.
never pitched in Major League Baseball before. And if he was a Met, I'd be concerned. And if I'm a Dodger
Yeah.
fan or a part of the Dodger organization, I'd be concerned. So I'm not gonna pick him. I wouldn't give him any credit, to be honest.
NY committee in the chat saying Sean Manaea is another comeback player of the year candidate. Absolutely. The Mets have a bunch of them, like you said, Rob. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Big years, I think, for Manaea and Severino, but I just truly do think that Severino has a higher ceiling this season. So that's where I'm going with.
Yep. So, baseball already started with Baltimore winning 4-1 against the Angels. And I actually got the Yankee game right. They're going to be facing the Astros for 4 to open up in Houston. So, I guess before we end the stream, it is obviously a Mets season preview, but is there any surprise team besides the Mets? Because if the Mets make the playoffs, that's a surprise, I guess, nationally, not really locally. But if there's one surprise team that you can say, wow, they're making a run for the playoffs, or they look better than they are and are in a position to make the playoffs late in the year, which team do you think that is as a surprise team?
Oh, geez. That's a really tough question. So, okay. Do you have one in mind so I don't steal yours?
I got the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
only because I got asked that question at work today, as the majority of the Yankee fans that I work with, we were talking, and yeah, I said the Pittsburgh Pirates. I like them. They got a lot of good young players, and the Central is not that good, so I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams this year.
That's a great pick. I think they got off to a really hot start in 2023 and kind of fizzled out there. So they can put it together a more complete season. That'd be great. That's a good pick. I think the Nationals are a little bit too young right now, especially in a little bit of a tougher division, right? We said the top 3 teams are going to make it. So I think the Nationals, as much as I want to put them in that conversation, I think that's more of a next year, year after type thing with them. But certainly don't sleep on the Nationals. Like I said, I have them above the Marlins in my standings predictions. A team that's been overshadowed in the AL East, right? Boston. I mean, maybe Boston. That's their only other team that I can think of that might surprise some people in terms of the division that they're in. I don't really have any other good guesses outside of that. I mean, you can put Cincinnati in there, but Cincinnati, we already saw who they were last season. I think Pittsburgh really is. Oh, great point. K-Mets. Shout out K-Mets. The Royals. The Royals.
Yep.
That was the slam dunk pick. I completely forgot about the Royals because that's how irrelevant they've been ever since the 2015 World Series. Wow, great. I can't believe that slipped my mind.
The AL Central has been irrelevant as a whole. So, anybody can win that division in the AL Central.
I rescind my pick. I'm not going Red Sox or Nationals. Give me the Royals because I do think I really like that team. The Tigers, they got some young up-and-coming players too. I like the Tigers a lot. Christian, great pick, but I think with the offseason that the Royals had, I'll be pretty high on them moving forward as the surprise team.
The Padres, I don't see as a surprise because they got way too much talent and spent a ton of money the last couple of seasons. Even this year, they still got a ton of talent. I don't see them as a surprise. I think they've been a complete bust. I mean, I think they just, they made the playoffs the same year they beat the Mets, but they haven't performed the way they should. So I don't think there'll be a surprise if they actually end up good. But yeah, Tigers, Royals, Pirates, the AL Central is up for grabs. Like, let's be honest, I put the Twins as the division winner just by default because I don't, you can't, it's hard to predict a young team performing well and outperforming expectations until they do, like the Diamondbacks last year, something like that. But they didn't really play well until late in the year and made a run in the playoffs. So it wasn't like they were a shock all season until very late. So, Chris, any final thoughts in regards to the Mets as a whole? Going into opening day, what are you most excited about day one, opening day tomorrow, 1:40 p.m. against the Brewers?
We just want to see how the bats come out swinging, right? I think Quintana was the safe bet as a consensus for the pitching side of things. So I want to see that he sets the tone as the veteran, getting the ball on opening day, right? Especially with the Kodai Senga injury. So I would like to say that the pitching is set, right? I think we both think the consensus is the bullpen is going to be a strong suit. How do the bats come out against a pretty tough pitcher opening day in Freddie Peralta, a guy that I've been wanting the Mets to target via trade all off season? Maybe it might happen next off season. We'll see. He's a very tough pitcher. How do the bats come out swinging? How does Marte look? How does Brett Beatty look? How does a DJ Stewart look? All these guys that we have said need to have bounce back seasons this year for the Mets to be a great ball club. Those guys at the bottom of both of our lineups there, even Harrison Bader's name can get tossed into that category. How do those guys look? So I'm excited to see what the bats got. Maybe we see Pete Alonso break out of that little power slump that he showed in spring training. I believe he only hit 1 or 2 home runs, something like that. A lot of singles, a lot of doubles for him. Maybe he puts one out of the ballpark, but yeah, I like this lineup. I don't like it. I don't love the bottom half of the lineup, but I think that would probably be my exciting factor to see how they fare early and often. Because like you said, the main point of the Mets this season, start off hot, especially through April and early May when the schedule is a little bit tougher. These guys, top to bottom, 1 through 9, need to perform, get on base, keep that next man up mentality, and keep the line moving. So give me the lineup. That's what I'm most excited about to see opening day and when I'll be there on Saturday to watch these guys in person.
Absolutely. And we'll both be there on Saturday doing our pregame show. Yeah, I was gonna go with the bats, but I'm excited about the bullpen because I think the bullpen is number one in regards to this team. I think the lineup's a close second, but I'm excited about this bullpen because I think this bullpen is going to be really damn good. And I don't care if the score is 6-0. Edwin Diaz is coming out for opening day with the trumpets to just with the lights, the new flickering lights and the LEDs and going crazy. The fans are going to be going crazy, and I think it's going to happen. I think the bullpen is going to be excellent, and I'm really excited about the bullpen. But for opening day, I agree with you. I want to see the bats just. I know Freddie Peralta is tough, but it's his first outing of the season. You know, the Mets, when they're good, they get starting pitchers out of the game early. When they were successful in 2022, they had high pitch counts always against the Mets, getting them out in the 4th inning, 3rd inning, no more than the 5th inning. That's when they're successful. Get into bullpens, regardless if they're good or not. You get into their bullpens, especially early in a series, then late in the series, they're not going to use as many the good bullpen arms. You got to use the back end of the bullpen that are not as good. And I think that's where the Mets shine in 2022, where I think they're going to be where they need to be successful this year. So, Chris, final thoughts and let everybody know what's going to go on with your channel. And we'll talk quickly about tomorrow's show for us.
Yeah, like I said, check out the Mason Mets pregame show live tomorrow, changing things up. We have the schedules posted in the community tab of our channel. Obviously, always subject to change. So Rob will give you the updates on when we're going live tomorrow for opening day, because I know that you'll be in attendance. Just dropped the video earlier today on my channel. Make sure you go check that out. Dropped it very early in the morning. Wanted to get it out before this live stream, talking a little bit about why I think the Mets really just shouldn't be losing an opening series to a lowly Brewers team that has had everything working against them this offseason, whether it's injuries, trades, all that good stuff. So go check out that video. A lot more Mets content coming on the way. We have collaborations galore for you all. Amazing Mets pregame show, Simply Amazing show over on the PSF app. Make sure you go download that app in your app store. We'll be simultaneously streaming both to our YouTubes and the PSF app. And that's a nice little interface over there for you all to get some content on your phones. Great stuff going on. I appreciate everybody that's subscribed to the channel. I appreciate everybody's support that's rocking with us here in the early afternoon of a Thursday. I appreciate it. Thank you. To all the people commenting in the live chat. It means a lot. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to both channels as well. I appreciate it. Let's go.
Absolutely. So Chris got 85 wins. I got 87 wins. I got the Mets in second place, and Chris got it in third place. But both of us have the Mets making the playoffs as a wild card team. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the debut of the amazing Mets pregame show with myself and CP. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., early start pregame show, but I'll be in the parking lot of Citi Field. Well, actually, the Marina lot, which is a little further from Citi Field, but I'll be with the Seven Line Army early in the morning, doing tailgating and all that stuff. So if the wind holds up, I'm gonna have my tripod up in the back, probably with the ocean and LaGuardia Airport behind me. But you will see that. Hopefully the service is pretty good, which it usually works out pretty well in the Marina lot. But we'll definitely have the pregame show. It's going to be about a 45-minute pregame show because Chris has got to run out after the pregame show and head up to New York for Saturday's games. So 10 a.m. the Amazing Mets pregame show debut. Me and Chris, make sure you're here for opening day pregame show 10 a.m. With that said, guys, happy opening day for most baseball fans. Tomorrow is our home opener, our opening day. Let's go Mets, guys. Let's have a great season. Everybody in the chat, let's go Mets. See you next time, guys. Chris, have a great day. Safe trip when you do. Everybody have a good day. Enjoy baseball. See you next time, guys. Have a good day.
See y'all. Let's go Mets.